Welcome to Tales from the Fandom, a podcast that brings a special guest out of the multiverse and straight to you. And now your host, David Ginsburg.
Hey everybody, welcome to Tales from the Fandom, the show that has been called The Working Man's Nerdist by Anthony Vondesauer of Curse of Silver Lake podcast. You guys can check out his podcast. I appreciated his awesome review. If you haven't seen it, check it out on our Facebook or on his website. It's definitely a great read, and I really enjoyed it. So thank you, Anthony, for that review. I wanted to just mention a few things before we get started with Sara and her episode. The first thing is that I started a Patreon site. You can find it at patreon.com/talesfromthefandom. If you enjoy the show, that's awesome. If you have extra money that you'd like to contribute towards the show, definitely just take a look and see if you're interested. There's some really neat things that are going to be coming up in the next few months. I have actually 2 new podcasts that I'm working on besides Tales from the Fandom. And anything would kind of help with hosting fees. But again, I do this because I enjoy it. So if I sit at $0 until the end of time, then that is perfectly fine. But definitely just check it out if you're interested. If not, just keep on listening. The next thing is that Sara's episode had a recording issue. I was actually on with Sara for a good deal of time. Unfortunately, my recorder stopped recording at a certain point, and you'll hear that in the conversation. The first topic we talk about is Disney, and it abruptly ends, and then you'll hear it start back up with talking about the TV show Lost. And unfortunately, the recorder stopped, and when I was doing my conversation with her, I did not notice that the recorder had stopped for at least probably 5 to 10 minutes. So I truly apologize, number one, to Sara, because it's not her fault at all, and our conversation was phenomenal. It was definitely just on my end, and I apologize to you, the listeners, because it is just something where it was unavoidable at a certain point. The program stopped working, and then at one point I didn't even notice that it had stopped working. But it is what it is, and that's where it is. But Sara's a great person. I love her work on Instagram. You can take a look for her work, and just enjoy the episode because it's a really fun one. Thank you so much for listening, and I will talk to you guys another time. Welcome to Tales from the Fandom, the podcast that brings a special guest out of the multiverse and straight to you. Today's guest is a well-known person in the Disneybound community. Her name is Sara. She's an alumna of Northwestern University's RTVF and creative writing for the media programs. She's a talented writer, an effortless storyteller, and she is amazing with her Disneybound outfits that she gets to wear to Disneyland. And it seems like she goes every day, but that can't be the case. But please welcome to the program, Sara. How are you doing today?
Hi there. I am well. How are you?
I'm doing great. I'm so glad to talk to you. Like I told you before, when I was looking for people to record with, you kept popping up with the most amazing Disneybound outfits.
Thank you. That is so sweet.
So I guess let's just start with Disney. And I mean, you live over in California. Have you always been a big Disney nerd, or
yes.
Did it take time?
No, it took no time at all. I can't remember a time when I wasn't an insane Disney fan. And to put that in perspective, I grew up on the Upper West Side in New York, and I had books and books and books of Disney parks. People always say, like, what's your favorite Disney movie? But for me, the parks really are the heart of my Disney love.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I love the movies, too. I grew up with all of the movies. My parents had actually bought many of the VHS tapes before I was even born. They just sort of, they're not even insane Disney fans, but they're sort of film collectors in general.
Okay.
So I grew up, I was born in 87, but I grew up with some of the movies that kids who were born around my year didn't grow up with because their parents hadn't bought those films and they were back in the vault.
Right.
So I have a very thorough Disney knowledge, and I grew up going to Disney World a lot because my parents are lawyers and they had a lot of ABA conferences down there. So For a kid growing up in New York, I went to Disney parks at least once a year, sometimes more than that when I was in my formative years.
Okay.
And when I moved to California, I got a job at the parks, and now I live down the street. And I no longer work there, but I can walk to Disneyland from my apartment at the moment.
That is amazing.
Oh, it's great. I'm living the dream.
I was just about to say, that sounds like you're living the dream just to be within walking distance.
It's a 17-minute walk from my front door to Disney property. It's a 40-minute walk from my front door to, like, in the front gates of Disneyland.
Gotcha.
That's including security time, of course.
Of course. Now, with the added security that they have.
Yeah, it's actually, I personally think it's much improved with it's not really added security. It's sort of like they've pushed out the perimeter.
Mm-hmm.
And I think because of that, there are more gates, and I think it's more efficient.
I can only speak from the Orlando location, where sometimes it gets a bit clustered, but for some of the other parks, it's not as bad.
It was really rough at the Magic Kingdom last time we were there, but they kind of have the same issue. They don't have enough space to have more security gates to resolve the issue.
Exactly. I mean, they're kind of bottled in with what they've got. So, what's your favorite Disney movie?
My favorite Disney movie is Sleeping Beauty, and then the second two that sort of flank Sleeping Beauty are Alice and Peter Pan.
Okay, so you're old school Disney.
1950s is my jam. I just love that era of Disney film.
And why is that?
Well, I think it has to do with, Walt was still very involved in those days. A little less so with Sleeping Beauty. Although, I mean, he was there throughout the entire process, but he was also focused on Disneyland while that film was being made. But, you're looking at a period where you watch those credits and you see every single one of the 9 old men listed right in there.
Right.
And all my favorite characters were designed by Mark Davis. He is my favorite.
It is amazing to go back to look at that time period and just know, it was just those few people working to make such an amazing movie. And now you have credits that take 5, 6, 7 minutes.
Well, and the thing is, in those days, they just didn't credit a lot of the people who were involved. Like, the more technical side just doesn't receive credit. They, the people running the department, like Iworks, would get credit, but you have to think that there were, it's a big collaborative project to make an animated feature.
Right.
So, there aren't, pages and pages of render artists, but, I don't think they were really crediting the ink and paid ladies.
Ah, that's a shame, but I mean, I guess that is for what it is at the time that they were doing it.
It was just, it was different all over Hollywood, not just at Disney. It was, a period in which credits came at the front of the movie, not at the end, so they didn't want to take up all of that screen time. That
is true, too. My kids, when they watch some of those older movies, they always ask, why is it taking so long to get to the movie?
Yeah, your attention span is very different as a child. You want to skip the credits, but now it's so wonderful to see them. I mean, the films come with an overture.
Yep, something that's lost to some of these, more modern films.
Yeah, I mean, I'm struggling now even to think of a movie. I mean, the most traditional opening of a recent film would be Enchanted because it's mimicking the classic films, but even that doesn't have that credit sequence.
Right. And I loved Enchanted. That was such a nice throwback to be able to watch. That
movie, felt very personal because it's set in my neighborhood where I grew up.
Really?
Yeah. It's set maybe about 30 blocks north of me for parts of it.
Okay.
My apartment is 30 blocks north of my apartment. But when they film all of the sequences in Central Park, literally my apartment building is in the background of some of the shots.
That is so awesome.
Yeah, it's very much like my life.
So we have your favorite Disney movie. Who's your favorite Disney character?
Oh, that's such a complicated question.
We can break it down to princess and non-princess, or however you want to.
Even that character. So it's Aurora was my traditional favorite Disney princess growing up, but then Tangled came out, and I'm literally Rapunzel. So it's sort of the two of them now. And then Alice. Alice as a non-Disney character even is literally me. It's Alice in Wonderland, the book and the movie, and all of Alice in Wonderland is my life. And then when we get a little more obscure, Figment is my spirit animal. So he's
I
sort
love
of my
Figment.
Yeah, it's kind of when normal people are what's your favorite Disney character? I'm Alice, Rapunzel, Aurora. But when Disneyland cast members are who's your favorite? I'm Figment. Just straight off Figment. but no one knows who that is because he's only in Disney World. He doesn't even have a presence in Disneyland.
Right.
So he's very obscure.
Right. I remember when I first went on that ride down at Epcot, I love Figment. I think I still have my Figment Dragon back from like either the late 80s or early 90s at this point. He's
Literally
somewhere.
in my line of sight right now, I have 4 Figment plushes that I can see from where I'm sitting.
And that is amazing because he's always under such threat of being shut down.
I'm really hoping that they'll, when the current contract with their, oh my god, I can't remember the word right now. All of the rides have a sponsor.
Yeah.
I guess the Kodak sponsorship is going to end, I think it's sometime in the next, 5 years.
Okay.
And that would be when they would start to look at, changing the ride again. I think the ride right now is charming, but it's a pale imitation of the original.
Right.
I also rode the ride in that short period where Figment wasn't in it, and compared to that, this ride's wonderful. But my biggest complaint isn't even the ride. My biggest problem is the Figment Playground that they took away, and they put in that awful digital experience, which is just so lacking in magic.
Right. Yeah, it's something where, I just hope we don't lose the character, because
I don't think we will at this point. I think Disney has figured out from a business perspective that they cannot get rid of Figment, that when they got rid of him, they really lost their only mascot for Epcot.
Mm-hmm.
And now that they're using him on food and wine things and stuff like that, I think they understand, he sells. It would be foolish to get rid of him.
Exactly. I know.
They've even started merchandising the orange bird again.
I know that living here in Orlando, with all the updates that we get, especially with Disney Studios now being halfway shut down for Star Wars Land and Toy Story, that they keep bringing up, well, Epcot's next up for being redone.
Yeah,
and
there are other areas of Epcot that are definitely going to be touched first. Universe of Energy and the old Wonders of Life Pavilion. That whole corner of the park is troubled. So I feel like we'll see change there much sooner.
Exactly. Yeah, those especially those pavilions, because all they're doing now is using them for character meet and greets, which is fine. But I remember going when they had the concept cars and the robots and all these cool things to look at, and then now some of them sit empty, some of them aren't used, and it's just sad at certain points.
Epcot has lost its way over the past 10 years, and it wasn't so noticeable 10 years ago. But now when you look at it, there is no mission statement for Epcot, and I think that they're going to have to find their way back to the original mission statement in a way that is still compelling and Disney.
Mm-hmm.
Because originally they tried to make it like Disney, but without the Disney characters, and that wasn't very effective. And then they were too aggressive about trying to cater to teenagers in the 90s when they did Test Track and
Mission to Mars. Yeah, Mission, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and now the park doesn't really have much draw for families. So they need to figure out a good way to do all of that. I really like the direction that they've gone in the World Showcase, bringing in more Disney characters but still maintaining the original feel of the World Showcase. I love what they did with the Mexico Pavilion ride.
Yes, that one has. I enjoyed Mexico. Sadly, our passes ran out before we could check out the Frozen Ever After in Norway.
Would you like to hear what was the quick review?
Well, I've seen it. I saw someone put it on YouTube, but I can't sit for 2 hours with my kids waiting in line for something.
No, we did manage to ride it with fast passes on our last visit, and bear in mind, Maelstrom was one of my favorite rides in Epcot. It was Maelstrom and the original Journey into Imagination ride.
Okay.
Neither exists any longer.
Right.
Nothing will ever compare with Maelstrom as being absolutely absurd and delightful. But when I say that I didn't love the Frozen ride, it's not because I'm like, no, they took my ride away. It's honestly because I think it has the same problem that this current generation of attractions has had, where it has absolutely no focus. and it could easily be fixed. There's like one major change that I would make to the ride without even changing a single story moment that would make the entire thing make a little bit more sense. And it just comes down to that. It's like, here's a scene, here's a scene, here's a scene. And I don't mind that it's not like what we call a book report ride. It's not literally the story of Frozen. I'm fine with that. I don't think the rides need to be the exact ride. I actually love the Roger Rabbit cartoon spin, as insane as that ride is, because it's a tour of an expanded universe of Roger Rabbit. But the problem with the Frozen ride is that they just wanted to put everything in it, and they didn't really emphasize story. And that's sort of been the problem. The Cars ride has the exact same problem. It's not cohesive. There's one ride at the beginning, and then there's one ride at the end, and they easily could have tied them together. They just didn't put in the effort to do so. Crush's coaster in Disneyland Paris is a very similar issue. They wanted to build an e-ticket, but they also wanted to stick a dark ride at the start, and it uses up valuable space to do that. And it's not a children's ride because it's a roller coaster. English, like we watched it in English, but then had an assignment to write about it in French. And she then, decided that, everyone really liked it and was prepared to start season 2, and we would all watch Lost and then have a weekly assignment where we summarized the episode in French.
Mm-hmm.
And I went to her and I said, hey, listen, I have a DVR. Like, DVRs were new at the time. It's like, I have a DVR. If I start recording the series and go buy the DVD of season 1, can I write recaps of season 1 until I'm caught up? Because I really want to watch this entire series because it looks amazing. And she was cool with that, so I went and I finished season 1 in, probably about 2 weeks. I mean, I was in school, half of the time, so I couldn't, binge seriously. But I got my mom watching it with me, my dad watching it with me. I think my grandma was even watching it for a while. So it became, a huge thing in our household. My dad wasn't as into it as my mom and I were. But my mom and I were, when that episode, I think it's in season 2, where the hatch doors come down inside the hatch where there's the lockdown.
Yes.
And there's all the black light paint on all of the doors with the map of all of the various hatches.
Yep.
I'm really sorry for anyone who's binging Lost on Netflix and hasn't seen this yet. You probably won't even know what I'm talking about if this doesn't sound familiar. My mom and I paused our DVR and ran up. We have a huge projection TV in New York. My parents are they're lawyers and they're big, they're not creatives at all, but they're super, super into high tech stuff, and film is their passion. So we have it's a 60 inch, or no, bigger than 60 inches. And it was 7 feet wide or something like that. Like small movie theater scale HD projection system in our living room. It's out of control. It's really ridiculous watching movies in the house. So we paused and ran up to our huge projection and we're trying to read everything on it.
That is awesome.
My dad's what are you doing? And we're what is that? Is that in Latin? What does that mean? And my Latin's not that great. I only took Latin for a year. So I look at my mom and I'm wait, this aired 3 hours ago. We're running at a laptop, and already someone had posted online translations of everything that was on there.
Yes.
And my dad's can we start the episode? We're shh, this is important. So my passion for Lost has never flagged. I'm just still into it. I rewatched the entire series with Neil last year because he'd never seen it, and I was just as emotional the second time around. It was really funny because I didn't really remember things that had happened in seasons 5 and 6. I had rewatched seasons 1 and 2 probably 2 or 3 times with other friends, getting them into it.
Right.
But he's haven't you seen this? I'm yeah, these episodes aired when I was in my freshman year of college. I've seen them once, and I was waiting week to week to see them. No, I don't remember point for point what happened in every episode. I remember how the series resolved, but no, I don't remember the details of season 6.
Yeah, the thing is that I went back on Netflix at one point and I was watching it, and I was I don't remember any of this.
Yeah.
Look, there's the characters that, existed for a season or 2 and then that was it.
And there were pieces that I remembered very vividly. I think it's season 5, the nosebleed season. I don't want to say more than that for anyone who hasn't gotten that far into Lost because it would get very spoilery, but yeah, the nosebleed season, I remembered a lot of that very vividly. That really stuck with me.
Now, who's your favorite character?
Charlie, followed by, Desmond, And there's like one more that I really love. Faraday.
Okay.
And when the three of them, they had like an episode that was like, it was like crack for me. It was like Charlie, Desmond, and Faraday go on like a wacky adventure, and I was like, my boys.
Yes, I love Hurley. Hurley is my guy.
I love Hurley too. I mean, Hurley would be like, of the core characters, yeah, he would be like, it would be like Charlie, then probably Hurley, yeah. And then I feel like maybe Saeed kind of starts to sneak in there. I also was like in love with Boone, so
okay.
That's a personal problem, though.
Yeah, I mean, those characters in that show at the time, just every week it was something different, and every week you were like, what did I just watch? What is going on?
Yeah. And honestly, like, a lot of fans were very unhappy with the finale. I loved how the series ended. I really thought that they resolved, if you were paying attention, I felt that they resolved almost every question you could have been asking. And, you know, really, for me, it was about the characters, and the characters all had their storylines resolved, and that was what was important. I felt that they all received closure. That was what mattered. It
was always something that I enjoyed, especially that last season, just getting really, like, you got answers, and you know what, you don't have to have all of the answers. Just getting some of the answers was good. And then just getting to see the characters progress from that first episode to that last episode was really something special to see.
Yes, and I'm still upset that Michael Emerson didn't win an Emmy for the Ben/Sideways episode, because I thought that was one of the most poignant episodes of that season. I really thought he was robbed.
Yeah, he and, I'm going to forget his name now, the guy who played Locke.
I can't remember either.
Those two actors, like, everyone afterwards wanted, like, just a show with them in it. It didn't matter what it was going to be, just give them a show together.
Yeah.
Did you, like, there's always, like, the divide on, like, who, like, pairing-wise, there's always, like, Sawyer and Kate, Jack and Kate, Juliet with Sawyer.
I ship Sawyer with everyone. I'm like Sawyer's on screen with Kate, and I'm like OTP, and then Sawyer's on screen with Juliet, and I'm like no, this is my OTP, and then it's like back to Kate, and I'm like OTP again. I don't ship Jack with anyone. I'm like, Jack, go away. Just like, no, Sawyer's here.
Is Jack on the island?
Yeah, I'm like, Jack, you just go over there and be like, he's a great, like, from a writing perspective, he's a great character.
Mm-hmm.
And he's a really tightly written character, but he's not particularly likable. So, you know, I'm like just never gonna ship him with anyone. I'm like, is Sawyer? I mean, I was really like when Sawyer and Juliet were together, I was just like so happy that Sawyer was happy, and then like they wrenched my heart out, and then I wanted him to be with Kate again.
Right.
And I also just couldn't understand why Kate was ever attracted to Jack. Like I like as a viewer just never bought it.
I never got it. Never.
Yeah. I understand like the appeal of Jack conceptually, but just really didn't see any chemistry between them.
Yeah, it was a bit rough. I mean, Jack is there for what he's supposed to do, but other than that, it would have been an interesting show to see without Jack.
Yeah. I mean, the real question is, without Jack, what protagonist would you put in that role, like, to balance things out?
And there's not one.
I mean, I actually think that the best answer would actually to be, you know, if I were writing this myself, to have a female protagonist.
Just don't have one on the show, sadly. I mean, you look at it and you're like, I don't really see anyone filling that Jack role. Like, the character
it would have to be a rewritten new character.
Yep.
Because definitely none of the female. I mean, there are some wonderful female roles on Lost, and that is one of the things that I love about the show. Even though all my favorite characters are men, there are some very strong female characters, and they do a lot of very feminist work to redefine roles on the series, and especially showing the contrast between their roles on the island and their roles in life, like Sun in particular.
Yep.
They really did dive into that stuff. But yeah, no, there isn't, like, I couldn't just be like, oh yeah, just shift this one female character over to be the new, like, leader character, like, there isn't an answer
right.
of the existing ones.
Exactly. There's not. And, there's Jack for you. Yay, Jack. Thanks for being around.
But you definitely could redevelop Jack to be a female character.
Oh, yeah.
And it would actually possibly make Jack much more compelling if that was a female character, because there would be some gender roles going on there, and having a strong female leader really would have made that, it would soften the character a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Even if it was the exact same personality type, it would still read as a little bit softer.
Yeah, it wouldn't be as Jack was, so to speak.
It would kind of be like having Robin Scherbatsky from How I Met Your Mother, actually, because they are... At their core, they're very similar characters.
Right.
Like, they have the exact same daddy issues.
I've never thought of that, but I'm going to have to tell some of my friends that are really into Lost about that, and just be like, just think about replacing Jack with Robin.
It really, I think it would work.
It would work, plus there would be, Canadian. Yay!
Yeah, absolutely.
We have Lost, and it's so amazing. The story is as it is, and we have these characters. And there's not much to say more about it, although it would have been interesting to see, like, just some extra side stories, or, like, I know that they did some stuff for the DVD, like with Hurley wrapping some stuff up at the end of the series.
Oh, I have not seen those featurettes. I'm going to have to track those down.
Yeah, I believe there's one with Hurley, and I don't know if it's Hurley or if it's with I'm forgetting his name, Michael Emerson's character.
Mm-hmm. Ben.
Ben doing something with some of the Dharma stations around the world that are still active.
Oh, that'd be awesome.
And I think it's on, like, the special DVD box set that was released. I'm not sure if it's out on YouTube. But there's a book series, totally unrelated to Lost, that keeps you up, which I know for people that were watching Lost Lost people always were up, and there's, like, all the awesome reviews that were out there. But there's a book series. I always like to talk to people about book series that really get them, like, interested in, brought into that series, and it's something called the Lioness Quartet by an author named Tamora Pierce. Yes,
those are my absolute all-time favorite books, which always surprises people, because people, I'm a big Harry Potter fan, and I love, there's so many books that I love, and very few people have heard of these books, unless you're really deep into young adult or fantasy. So people are always like, wait, it's not J.K. Rowling? I'm like, no, it's Tamora Pierce. I discovered the Lioness Quartet. The first book is called Alana, the First Adventure. And I discovered those in 5th grade, and they became my absolute guide to life. They are my favorite books. They're the books that I pick up if I'm not feeling well or I'm upset. I can just open one of them, and I will just instantly feel better. It has the answers to all of my questions in life. They're just wonderful. And the funny thing is, the main character and I really could not be more dissimilar.
Okay.
But I just love her. She's such a tightly written character, and I've learned so much as a writer from Tamora Pierce. I mean, she really put in a bunch of fears for this character, because this character is pretty fearless, but she's just terrified of spiders. She's scared of the dark. She hates the cold. Just really little human things.
Mm-hmm.
Like, the series is about a girl who wants to be a knight. And women aren't allowed to be knights. And she is a twin. The book starts out when I think they're 8 years old. And they're about to be shipped off. She's about to be shipped off to basically a convent for her education. And her brother is about to be shipped off to become a knight. He is not a physical person. They're both what's called gifted.
Right.
In the series, they're magic users. And Alana is just terrified of her magic. She really doesn't want to nurture it at all. But she wants to be a knight. And her brother just wants to be a magician. So they forge their father's signature and change the letters of introduction. And, it's like set in like a kind of medieval period, so it's really not that hard to get away with.
Mm-hmm.
So they switch places, and Alana cuts her hair, and she goes off to the palace, and her brother goes off to be basically off screen. for most of the series, but he does come back. He plays a part that he's, largely irrelevant for at least 3 of the 4 books. So they split. She goes, and the first book follows her through age, I think, 12 or 13.
Okay.
I think it's to 13 because she gets her period in the first book, which is, these books were written in the 80s, and even then, like, that's sort of like cutting edge to be putting that into it's YA, but like YA didn't exist then, so it's kind of like edgy for like older children's lit. But it's very important. I mean, she's disguising herself as a boy. Like, it's very important when she gets her period, and it's very important when she starts to get breasts and has to bind them and all of that. So it's all about her disguising herself as a boy and her friendships. The first 2 books take place at court, and the second 2 take place later on. But they are absolutely wonderful books, really great characters. I also cannot read a book that doesn't have humor, so they have a lot of really fun, silly moments. And I was just rereading the second book, which is my favorite book in the series, called In the Hand of the Goddess.
Okay.
And I was rereading it the other day. I have it on my phone, on my Kindle app. And I was noticing something that I didn't consciously perceive when first reading the series, or rereading it many times, but now that I, have a background in writing, it was very clear, like, they move at this breakneck speed. It's like, in my mind, like, this was like a major episode. It could have been like an entire episode of television, like like this one thing that happened. And I'm like, oh my God, that was like 3 pages.
Wow.
Yeah, and I'm actually realizing the same rereading Harry Potter. Like no wonder the movies aren't very good adaptations. Like, the amount of stuff that happens in, like, seriously 5 pages of Harry Potter is like 20 minutes of screen time. It's insane. Yeah, and that's just, the power of literature. There's so much left to the reader's imagination that once you have those characters, you can just do a quick, brushstroke, really, and there's so much to it.
Now, what is it about the books that, like, how did you find the books? Was it just something that was suggested to you, or did you come across them during school?
So I was a big reader from, like 2nd grade forward, and I was constantly just reading. And I had a bunch of, in 5th grade, I think I had no female friends in my 5th grade class. I had only guys who were all big readers as well. And like 2 or 3 of them read these books and were like, these books are awesome, Sarah, you have to read these. And I was like, okay. So I think it's actually very important to note that despite being a strong female fantasy book, 3 boys recommended them to me. Like, these are totally accessible for male readers, and I think it's very important to say that because a lot of little boys don't read and aren't recommended books with female main characters.
Right.
But, as a girl, you read plenty of books about boys. Like, I read Harry Potter, but we don't always recommend books about girls to boys. And I think it's very important to say, like, these are books about sword fighting and magic. Like, anyone can love them. If you like those things, you're going to love these books.
Exactly.
So these boys were like, hey, read this book. And I was like, okay. And I the first time I picked it up, found the first about 20 pages to be a little slow. And then it just took off. And then I was staying up all night reading these books. I remember my mom coming in and taking the 2nd book and being like, you can't finish this tonight. Like, you have to go to sleep. You have school in the morning. And taking it into the other room. And then I crept out of bed, found the book, went back into my room and finished it. And I have a very strong feeling about recommending books. If it's not a book that would keep me up all night reading it, I won't recommend it to anyone. So.
Oh, okay. Well, that's a good reason to have on there.
Yeah.
And you were, what, middle school or
I was in
elementary?
Grade, so I was 11.
Okay.
I was a very advanced reader, though. I would say that for the average reader, probably 7th grade is a good time to be picking these up.
Okay.
But I also sent them as a gift to a friend who was in her 20s at the time, and she stayed up all night reading them, too.
Right. I know that's one of the things that we're having trouble with our kids right now is that they're not as engaged in reading as we want them to, both my wife and I.
Have you taken in audiobooks?
No, we've not done the audiobook route. We've gone with the bookstore and let them pick out books. Like, I've given them the Harry Potter books, the Percy Jackson books. Like, they're more advanced for their age than what, someone would be reading them as, but
they're just not reaching for books.
They're just not reaching for those books.
Try audiobooks. I was a big reader, but I actually have a slew of learning disabilities that make reading physically challenging.
Okay.
And I have phenomenal audio processing skills. So there are some books that I'm thinking to myself, I'm like, why do I know Harry Potter so well? Like, I only remember reading them like once or twice. And then I'm like, oh, I had all the audiobooks too. I reread them as audiobooks like probably dozens of times. And there are certain books like Ella Enchanted is one of my favorite books. And I can tell you right now that is a gorgeous audiobook. And it's only like 5 hours.
Okay. I will have to try that with my kids and see if they take to the audio rather than, trying to let them enjoy the, the reading the books instead of after, coming home and doing their homework, they don't want to read anything.
Yeah, no, I mean, honestly, I would go to sleep listening to audiobooks. How old are they?
They are 8 and twin 7.
Okay, yeah, I would say Series of Unfortunate Events should definitely be on the horizon. Those are good, like, about 10-year-old books, but Dealing with Dragons by Patricia C. Reed would be my number one recommendation for that age, and then followed by Ella Enchanted.
Okay, I'll have to check those out. I think I've read Dealing with Dragons a long time ago when I was a kid.
I adore those books. For anyone listening who hasn't read them or has children who might want to read them to them, they are very feminist princess books about a princess who doesn't want to be a princess. She runs away and becomes a dragon's princess and has adventures that are just delightful in a fairy tale, sort of mashup fairy tale world.
Mm-hmm.
They've got a very great, like, really wry sense of humor.
I'm going to have to find them and get started on them. We've got a good trip back and forth from school. They can start listening to them.
Yeah, audiobooks in the car is just a wonderful thing. I am currently listening to 3 audiobooks. I've got the one that I'm listening to with Neil. I have the one that I listen to on my own when I'm driving, and then I'm re-listening to all of Harry Potter as I go to sleep.
That is awesome. I know I have friends that do that too. They listen to audiobooks when they are getting to bed, and they're like, well, I've listened to it so many times, it doesn't matter if I fall asleep on it or not.
Yes, and I try not to listen to books that I haven't read before while going to bed. Fortunately, Audible has like everything down to an 8-minute sleep timer.
Okay. And
then you can just, if you're still awake, you can just hit play again and hit another sleep timer.
Right, it's like Netflix where it's like, are you still watching? You haven't moved your mouse in hours.
It's like, yes, I'm still watching. Don't judge me. It's funny. When you're watching, like, Breaking Bad, you're like, hell yeah, I'm still watching. But when you're watching Supernatural, you're like, yes, don't judge me.
Yes, exactly. I'm like, yes, I'm still watching Breaking Bad. I have been sitting here for 5 hours. Yes, I'm still learning how his recipe goes.
When it's great programming, you don't feel like Netflix is being snarky.
Right.
But when it's like something trashier, you feel like, oh, yeah, I am. Okay, shh.
Never ask my wife, when she's watching Friday Night Lights if she's still watching. I have to generally get up and turn the Kindle off when she's fallen asleep. And then I'm like, I think you passed out like three hours ago. But I've learned all about Tim Riggins a bit more.
I've never done that series.
Friday Night Lights is amazing.
I've heard good things.
My wife hates sports to a T, but she's like, I watched it and it's so good. I'm like, yes, I've been telling you that for years.
Oh, that's me with West Wing. I'm like, I have, strong political views, but generally, primarily watch, genre series.
Right.
And, oh my God, West Wing is incredible. It's like it might be the best show I've ever seen. It's like really like, I'm rewatching it. I watched it, I think like 6 months ago. I watched the entire series, and now I'm making Neil watch it, and we're already like 4 seasons deep, and it's been like a month.
Yeah, West Wing is so incredible. So much.
Just amazing writing.
As we wrap things up, obviously, during our Disney talk and during the introduction, I found you on Instagram, and the way I found you is I was looking at people doing cosplay, because who better to talk to about fandoms than people that, invest money and time, blood, sweat, and tears into outfits that they wear to conventions.
Yes.
And you came up with these incredible, and at the time I hadn't really heard about Disneybounding, but you dress up routinely as characters, but in just traditional clothing. But it kind of goes with the character.
It's a really wonderful way to express your love of Disney, or really anything. You can just bound anything.
Right.
But it's subtle, and it's just, you're wearing clothes that you would just wear. The whole point is not to be in costume. The whole point is to just, really like channel that character into your personal style.
Exactly. And you do that with so many different characters, and you do it amazingly.
There's just so many characters that I love, and I just want to, share my love for all of them.
Now, did you get into cosplaying first, or was it the bounding first? What came first?
I've been cosplaying. Well, I've been costuming since I could walk, and I've been cosplaying since high school. So
okay.
Yeah, cosplay was first, but I don't really associate the two in my mind. I've just always been a person who likes to costume, likes to play dress up, and Disneybounding factored perfectly into my life of like wanting to be characters, wanting to like channel characters.
Okay. Is there one that you prefer over? Like, do you prefer bounding, or do you prefer cosplaying, or is it just completely separate to you?
They're completely separate. Cosplay is a hobby and an activity. It's like an event. Disneybounding is just like living. It's like breathing. It's like you get up and you put on clothes. And I just sort of like trip and fall into Disneybound at this point. No, I mean, like literally, like I can't reach into my closet without pulling out a Disneybound because like I like see like, oh, that shirt looks nice to wear today, and I'm like, oh, it's like an Alice color, and like, oh well, and like the simple fact is like the colors that pair with like whatever like shirt that you're like putting on, like they're already complementary. That's how Disney characters are designed. Like it's not that hard to just accidentally end up in a Disneybound, even if you're not trying to.
Gotcha. Now, do you routinely dress up, or not? And I don't mean dress up. Like, do you routinely just pull something out of your closet and that's what you're wearing, and it just happens to be a Disney character at this point?
I mean, basically, what'll happen is, some days I get up and I'm like, I'm going to be this today. And actually, when I was a child, I used to get up and I would announce, like, I'm Alice today. And if my mom didn't call me Alice, I wasn't going to respond to her. Okay. And I'd be, like, running down the street, and she'd be like, oh, God, who is she? Like, Alice, Wendy. Like, she'd just start, like, yelling character names at me until I stopped.
Okay.
So, that's already my personality. And then going into Disneybounding, it's like, I'll reach into my closet, and it'll either be like, I'm being this today, or it'll be like, oh, that looks warm. Like, that looks cozy. That's a nice color. It's, like, gray out. I'll be, like, bright. And then I'll look at that thing, and then I'll be like, well, what matches this? And then usually what matches it will just be a Disneybound. Okay. And then I'll go to my jewelry and I'll put the appropriate accessory on, and like, boom, I'm Disneybounding. And I don't even photograph all of those. Like I photograph new bounds when I do them. I photograph when I go to the park. And, but if I'm just re-wearing a Disneybound that's like, maybe I changed like part of it, like I don't always take a photo of it. Like, okay. I just get dressed. And if it's a new outfit, I take photos.
Right. Okay. So do you, so you get dressed, and sometimes it's bounding, sometimes it's not. Is it more often than not that you're bounding at this point?
So if I'm going to Disneyland, I would say like 99% of the time I'm going to wear a Disneybound. Okay. The exceptions to that would be like, it's ugly sweater day, or like, I have this cute new Goofy t-shirt that I want to wear and go take photos with Goofy. But if I'm going to Disneyland, it's going to be like a Disney outfit. So whether it's a bound or not, if there's like a Haunted Mansion's birthday, I was wearing a Haunted Mansion t-shirt, but I also had like a very kind of ghostly color palette to go with it. So it wasn't a bound per se, but it was like in the realms of a bound because I was also wearing all like kind of hitchhiking ghost looking colors. Gotcha. Disneybound has actually made me a much more stylish person than I was 5 years ago. I'm like completely not joking. 5 years ago, no one would have wanted to look at an Instagram of what I was wearing. And I learned how to accessorize. I learned how to, really accessorize, not just like jewelry, but like scarves and hats and like all sorts of like shoes and just everything.
Now, have you been, like, has Disneybounding been around before you, or were you kind of like there as it evolved into what it's become now with like Dapper Day and everything else?
I was a very early adopter of Disneybound, and that is pure happenstance that I was using Tumblr daily when Disneybound began. And as it so happens, I reached out to Disneybound's creator and blogger, Leslie Kay, who's now one of my best friends. I was already going to Dapper Day in those days, and she had said she was coming in for Dapper Day, and I messaged her. I said, hey, has anybody offered you a sign-in yet? And she said, oh, no, but we actually already got tickets, but, if you want to go to the park the day before Dapper Day, my friends and I would love to go. And I said, sure. And that was the beginning of a beautiful friendship. And, Leslie started featuring me and Neil on her blog periodically.
Mm-hmm.
Because, she knew us and she liked our bounds. Now she features us less. She makes a real effort to find Disneybounders who she doesn't know personally, who are doing great work and really share everyone's work. She loves, Tokyo Disneybounders. She's obsessed with their style sense. So she really shares, everything at this point.
Right.
But, way back when, yeah, she shared us a lot. And so that sort of led to me doing more and more Disneybounds and people, becoming aware of my Instagram through that channel.
Mm-hmm.
And now it's just a way of life. I mean, most of my friends are Disneybounders. I've made a lot of really wonderful friends through Disneybounding and through the Disney community in general. So, and now I have a few friends who, we have this insane group message going. We did, a buddy bound a little while ago, and then we're like, well, we should do another one. And then it kind of spiraled into, 5 of us doing a buddy bound, and now I think it's going to be, 6 of us for the next one, and it's just sort of hey, what do you guys, you guys want to all, dress up together even though we're not in the same state on, next Friday? And I'm like, sure, why not? Yeah, I wasn't doing anything that day. There's no reason I can't be the Cheshire Cat. Whatever.
That's so cool.
Yeah, it's fun. We just did the Daughters of Triton, and Neil was King Triton.
Right, I saw that on your Instagram. I was like, that's pretty cool that, they all just got together to do it, and, you guys put your pictures together.
Yeah, Lauren, Mrs. Disneyland, it's Mrs. Disneyland on Instagram. She's one of my favorite Disneybounders, and I did not know her personally when I followed her on Instagram. I don't follow a lot of people because, Facebook, you can't control what you're saying, but Instagram you can if you don't follow too many people. So
right.
I try to keep a short follow list so that I see, if I follow you on Instagram, I see every single post in my Instagram feed. I make sure that I'm not missing anything on there.
Mm-hmm.
So she's one of the very few people that I follow, and it was just because she followed me. I clicked on her, and I was like, whoa, this woman doesn't even go to Disneyland very often. She doesn't live here. But her style and her Disneybounds are off the charts. And I was like, wow, I have to follow her. And then I met her at Dapper Day this year, and she, came and found me, and I was like, wait. She's like, because she was like, oh, I follow you. I was like, wait, what's your handle? She's like, oh, it's Mrs. Disneyland. I was like, oh, my God, I love your bounds. I love everything you do, and now we're friends.
That's so awesome.
Yeah, so we geek out over each other. But it was her idea to do that Daughters of Triton group. And then she got our friend Chelsea, who also lives far away and has become one of my absolute best friends. We will text each other. I'm not even joking. We'll text for 3 hours, and then I'll look up and be like, crap, I had something to do. But that's what you do when your friends live long distance.
That is so awesome. And obviously the community is at least tight-knit from the way that you're talking about it, is that you guys are just, coordinating things and talking about things, and everyone's doing their own style. And I guess that's pretty, the cool thing. I mean, for cosplay, there's variety, but you're limited to certain things or certain characters or colors. But with Disneybounding, it could be almost anything as long as you're hitting that really the color palette of the character.
Yeah, I mean, the color palette is important, but also there are these other things that you start to look at, accessories that, add, sort of plot points and things like that in. I was Aladdin yesterday, and I wore a magic lamp necklace. And then there's also cut of clothing can really help a bound. If you see something that's frilly, it might be great for Ursula because she's got tentacles. So things that can kind of indicate, especially on things that are animals and stuff like that. There's so much to Disneybounding, and really the possibilities are endless.
Which is pretty incredible to see, not just from, you see people doing Dapper Day and obviously Disneybounding on Dapper Day, or you see the themed themed characters tied to like Christmas or tied to whatever event is going on, like Flower and Garden Festival here at Epcot. And it's so cool to see what people just are coming up with.
Yeah, I did, during the festival holidays at Disneyland, they had the Country Bear Jamboree characters out daily.
Mm-hmm.
And I Disneybounded, I think, 2 of them over the course of that time. No, 3. I think I did 3 of them. Wait, I can't remember now. I know I did Wendell, and I did a really hilarious, boomerang with him. And you know what? I think I never got a chance to do my big ass. So I did 2 of them. I did Liver Lips and Wendell. And I never would have been, woken up and been like, I'm going to bound as a country bear today. But I did it, and it was fun.
And country bears are awesome, even though my wife hates it.
Well, we don't have the attraction at Disneyland, so
oh
it
no,
was a really arbitrary thing for me to wear. We only have the Hungry Bear restaurant. Winnie the Pooh replaced our Country Bear Jamboree.
Well, that's sad.
I'm not a big Country Bear Jamboree fan, so I can't say I would be seeing it very often if it were here. But the sad part is that our Winnie the Pooh attraction is really pathetic compared to the Disney World one, and ours came second, so I don't understand how that happened. Like, our Splash Mountain is nowhere near as good as Florida's.
Right.
But Florida's was built second, so that makes sense. They made improvements.
Right.
What happened with the Winnie the Pooh ride? It is seriously a train wreck. It's adorable because it's Winnie the Pooh, but, it's seriously such a mess. It's like a fever dream. It's completely out of order, and it doesn't have the book element, so it really just makes no sense whatsoever.
Well, that's just crazy.
It's very strange.
That's something. I mean, I always get jealous that, you guys have the Indiana Jones ride out there, and that we don't have that, and it's like,
it's a really good ride. But, Dinosaur is the same ride. It's literally the same track with different programming.
I don't think I've ever been on the dinosaur ride, but I've never seen the dinosaur movie.
Oh, no, it's got nothing to do with the movie. The ride was actually rebranded to match the movie after the ride was already open.
Oh, okay.
It was originally just Countdown to Extinction.
Yes, and see, that, I think I've been on that ride. I can't tell you if I have.
It's a dark ride with dinosaurs. It's kind of hard to forget. It's, tucked away in Animal Kingdom. It's, way back there.
I might have been on it once then, a very long time ago. Probably when it was Countdown to Extinction, but when it got rebranded...
No, it was
they
didn't change the ride at all when they rebranded it, I don't think. They might have added in an iguanodon. Most of the changes applied to the the boarding video.
Okay, and I wouldn't remember at this point. But
yeah, you do not need to have seen Dinosaur. I've never seen Dinosaur, and I own it, I think. But it's my copy's in New York, though, so I haven't seen it.
Right.
I need to grab that at some point, because we've been watching all of the Disney films in order, and that will be on the list at some point.
Well, for those people who have been listening and are interested to check you out online, what's the best place for them to follow you?
Instagram. I am ThatPrincessGirl on Instagram. I'm ThatPrincessGirl on every social media platform, but Instagram is my most used social media platform.
And I follow you because that's how I found you. Well, I found you, and then I follow you. And I always try.
True. It's hard. Follow first, find after is sort of a Wonderland sort of thing to do.
Yeah, and the thing that I try to do whenever I follow someone is I always try to make the effort to comment, because clicking a heart is easy, but I always want to make sure people understand that I appreciate what I'm looking at. This is so cool, or this is great, or, something.
It's true. User engagement is very different when you comment.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's something, it's the same thing with Facebook and clicking on, okay, yep, I like it. I like to get comments too. Comment.
Yeah.
Let me know you're out there. Exactly.
So yeah, go follow and comment all over my Instagram, guys. I'll be friends with everyone.
Yes. Follow, because everything that comes out of your stuff is amazing.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Well, that's all I got for you right now. I mean, I'd have
right.
more for you, but time is limited, and I'm sure my kids want to come home from school at some point.
They should. And then you should get them audiobooks so that they can listen to them.
Yes, that's going to be my plan for tonight, so that way I can have it for them tomorrow.
Yay!
Well, Sarah, thank you so much for taking the time out of your schedule and making this happen.
Of course, it's been a pleasure.
Thank you for listening to Tales from the Fandom. Subscribe to us on iTunes or your podcast app of choice. Follow us on Facebook at www.facebook.com/talesfromthefandom to see photos, links, leave feedback, and check out upcoming guests. If you'd like to be a guest, email David at talesfromthefandom@gmail.com.